All right, and welcome back to Master Your Money Mindset. If our beliefs about money directly influence how much of it we have or don't have, which they do, then we absolutely must create what's known as a money consciousness. Or you can think of it as a wealth consciousness or a success consciousness. Because the truth is that, as you've learned, some of the beliefs that we have about money might be helping us, but chances are some of them might be holding us back. Now, quick question for you. I'll oftentimes do like workshops and seminars with rooms full of people, and when I ask people who here wants to make more money, like 100% of the people in the room usually put up their hand. Okay. Now, first of all, I want to make a small distinction. Okay, that you don't make money, you earn money. And there's a difference. Okay, it's small, but it's powerful. And I'm reminded of something that Bob Proctor once shared when he was talking about a business idea that he had. And somebody asked him, well, where are you going to get the money to do that? And Bob Proctor replied so quickly with, well, I'll get it from wherever it is right now. And I just love that response. And Bob Proctor had a witty way about him. But the truth is that all the money that you want in life is already here. It already exists. We don't make money, we earn it. And that'll make more sense here in a moment. So stick with me. Okay. Now, this might be a little bit of a throwback to high school science class, but let's take a step back here for a moment. And I want to remind you that money is a form of energy. And that's why they call it currency. Okay. Now, why is that important? Well, that's important because all energy operates according to law, meaning that it's very predictable once you understand the law. Okay. For instance, if I were to drop this pen right now, okay, what are the chances that it's going to go up? Like zero, right? I mean, thanks to the law of gravity, it's going to go down 100% of the time. That's very predictable, okay? We also know that, water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius and boils at 100 degrees Celsius, right? Or that heat expands certain materials in the heat of summer and so on and so forth, okay? But how this relates to money is that the first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form. It moves into form, out of form, and through form. Okay? And the truth is that earning more money is actually a transfer of energy. Okay? So if you want to earn more money, it's an exchange of energy. And there's that old adage that, you gotta spend money to make money. Well, it's true. And the reason is because, one of the many paradoxes of life is that whatever you want in life, first you've got to be willing to give it away. If you want love, you got to be willing to show and give love, right? If you want respect, you've got to be willing to give respect. Right? There's nothing worse than a boss or a manager that comes in and demands that you respect them. Why? Well, simply because they have the title of being the boss or the manager. Those people usually don't get respect for very long, right? Same with energy. If you want more energy, you got to exercise. It's very paradoxical in nature, but it's true. And if you want more money, you got to exchange that energy for it, okay? Now, there's a number of different what are known as universal laws at play, okay? And they differ from man-made laws in the sense that man-made laws change from time during, time and region, depending upon where you're from and that sort of thing. But universal laws are universal in nature, meaning that they always apply and they never change. They're consistent. Okay, and there's a number of different universal laws. There's the law of polarity, the law of vibration, the law of attraction. There's the law of gender, the law of relativity, there's the law of circulation, there's a number of different laws just off the top of my head. Okay. The one that we're going to be talking about today is the law of circulation. Okay. And this describes the fact that we live in what's known as an ocean of motion. Okay. And if you think about it in the terms of, water, for instance, rain falls from the clouds, lands either as snow or rain, runs down into the rivers, into the lakes, and eventually makes its way down to the ocean. From there, it gets evaporated back up into the sky and then returns as fall, right? It's constantly moving, okay? The same is true for our circulatory system. Blood in our body is constantly moving. And if for whatever reason that circulation or that flow ceases, that could be a life and death type of situation, correct? Well, the truth is that money operates exactly the same way, in the sense that money is always moving in and out of your account if you're paying attention, okay? But you get to decide where it goes. One of the things that my mentor taught me a long time ago that always struck a chord was that you've got to learn to release energy in the direction of your goal. Release energy in the direction of your goal. Control the flow and the direction of that energy. Okay? Now, question for you. Okay? How do you feel when you get a bill in the mail or at a restaurant, or you're required to spend more money? Okay? If you feel stressful or fearful or anxious or worried, don't worry. I mean, that's not uncommon, okay? But if we pinch pennies or we get stingy or tight-pursed or greedy, we can unconsciously cut off the flow of that energy, okay? And the truth is, like I said before, is that, money is always moving in and out of your account if you're paying attention, okay? And you get to decide where it goes. And we've got to start to learn to direct that energy towards our goals. Release energy in the direction of your goals, okay? Now, I'm reminded of something that Ken Honda once said. And if you're not familiar with Ken Honda, he's essentially the Japanese equivalent of Warren Buffett. He wrote a really interesting book called Happy Money, where he shared the secret to his success and wealth was a simple phrase, arigato money. Okay? Arigato money, which literally translated, I think means thank you money. And he suggests that we try this, okay? That when we get a bill or we're required to make a payment, that we release that money and say a little phrase that I release this with gratitude, knowing that it will return, okay? And even just a simple phrase like that can change your relationship or change the way that you feel when you're called to spend money or release money, okay? And it reminds me too of the importance of being a gracious giver and a gracious receiver. I don't know about you, but sometimes I've often felt resentful of certain people when I've had to spend money, especially large sums of money, okay? Certainly wasn't very gracious about it. But also in receiving, and you think about how oftentimes we reject things as simple as either compliments, like, hey, somebody says, I like that shirt. Oh, yeah, this? Oh, I've had this forever. I picked this up at Winners on the discount rack, and we reject the compliment. But we do the same with money sometimes too. Somebody tries to do us a favor or does something nice for us, and we'll oftentimes reject it, and it's either our ego or our pride, or in some cases, it could even be like our money mindset that stops us from being a gracious receiver because there's a part of us that doesn't feel either worthy or deserving of receiving it. Okay? Part of the reason is because a lot of times people will put money up on a pedestal. And I don't know about you, but a lot of times people base all of their decisions on one question. And the question often comes down to, well, how much does it cost? Okay. And if you think about it, when a lot of people go to a restaurant, it's not usually, well, what am I in the mood for tonight? Oftentimes, people's eyes wander to the right side of the menu and they're scanning the prices. And it's like, ooh, steak would be nice, but yeah, that's a little too expensive. I guess I'm getting the chicken tonight, okay, or whatever it might be. But they allow money to make all of their choices for them, whether it comes to food, menu items, clothes, or groceries at the grocery store. And a lot of times people will put money ahead of their own health. Okay. That's too expensive to buy organic. Wow. Huh. Or they'll put money ahead of their own happiness. Well, I'd love to, but that's too much money. I can't afford that. Okay. Or even sometimes they'll put money ahead of their own time. And some people will drive halfway across town for a deal at a discount store or a lower price at the pumps, right? And if you think about it, that's the worst trade ever. If you're trading that time for money, trading your time to save a few bucks. And the reason is because time is a finite resource. It's one of the few things that once you spend it, you are never getting it back. Or money, on the other hand, is an infinite resource. And there is no limit to the amount of money that you can earn in a lifetime. Okay? So one of the things that I chose a long time ago, and there'll be more on this later, is to decide not to put money on a pedestal and allow it to make all of my choices for me, depending upon the sticker price. And the reason is because, yes, there's a cost to doing certain things, okay? But there's also a cost for not doing them. And it's called an opportunity cost. Sometimes you got to ask yourself, what's the cost of not doing something? Because there is no situation that does not require a sacrifice of some sort. We are always required to sacrifice something. But if we're doing it correctly, we're sacrificing a lower or a lesser goal for a higher goal. Okay? The other thing to remember here and keep in mind is that, most people put money up on a pedestal and allow that to make all of their decisions for them. They have total control over the way that they think, the way that they feel, and the way that they behave. Okay, based on that simple question, like I said, how much does it cost? But we got to remember that money is not good or bad. Okay, it's just a tool. Okay, it's a tool, and the truth is that money will only make you more of what you already are. Okay, and if you're a generous, caring, loving person with more money, it allows you to be more generous, more caring, and more loving and more giving. Okay. But if you're a mean person or you're an evil person, more money is going to allow you to do more mean, evil, selfish type of things. Okay? But money is just a tool. That's it. It's not good or bad in and of its own right. Okay? It's all in how you use it. All right? And really, money's got one job, one function. That's it. And its sole function is to be spent. And I'm reminded of a story that I heard by Brad Lee. Brad Lee talks about how he was advising a businessman about building his business. And he asked him about the resources that he had access to. Okay. And he was holding back on a reserve fund of resources, not wanting to invest that to help build his business. And Brad Lee shook his head and he's like, what are you thinking, man? This is what that's for. That's like you trying to tell me that you're going to build a birdhouse, but you don't want to use your tool set. You'd rather hammer it together with a rock and whatever else you have on hand. Because why? Well, you want to hang on to those tools for a rainy day kind of thing. A future date. And that's kind of how people think about money. They want to hoard it. They want to stash it away. They want to pile it up and not use it to build the life that they want or to invest in themselves or their dreams or their business or what have you. Okay? But money is just a tool, and its sole purpose or its sole function is to be spent. And like I said, I made the decision a long time ago that I wasn't going to allow money to control my life or my decisions anymore. And that's a big reason why I created this workshop. So, another question here for you is, how do you feel when you see other people who have a lot of money? Okay? And be honest, like, is there an element of jealousy or maybe envy? Maybe there's a part of you that feels like angry, irritated, or annoyed, or maybe even like cheated, like you feel like they must have done something wrong, sort of thing. Spiteful maybe is another one. But here, the point that I want to make is that if you're unconsciously, maybe even consciously to an extent too, resentful or envious of others who have a lot of money, I can pretty much guarantee you there's a high chance that you're probably unconsciously rejecting money yourself. Okay? So try this. Instead of being critical of others who have a lot of money, okay, start celebrating others' wealth and start celebrating others' success. Start celebrating others' riches. Okay? The truth is, like I said, money is an infinite supply, and somebody else's success does not take away from your own. There's lots to go around. Okay? It's in an abundance mindset that we're talking about here. And there really is no limit to the amount of success or wealth that you can earn. Now, that being said, I should bring up another universal law, okay, which is the law of compensation. And the law of compensation goes like this. Your compensation is going to be equal to the quality of the product or service that you provide times the quantity of the number of people that you serve or provide that service or product to, plus your mental attitude while doing so. Okay? So if you would like one side of the equation to go up, mainly your compensation, you better start to ask yourself, well, how can I improve either the quality of the product or the service that I provide, okay, or improve the number of people that I serve, or, and I would argue we could probably work to improve all three, our mental attitude while doing so. Because let's be honest, like there are some people who have, great products or great services, but they have a terrible attitude, and in many cases would rather not work with them. Am I right? So I would suggest if you want your compensation to go up, that you work on improving all three of these: the quality of the work that you do, the number of people that you serve, and your mental attitude while doing so. If you are able to improve that, just watch as your compensation and cash flow go up. Napoleon Hill has a really great point here when he says that a person's income is determined by the sort of service he or she renders, the quantity and quality of that service, plus the mental attitude of which it is rendered. Good old Napoleon Hill. But Bob Proctor had a question one time that I think was, he had this witty way about him. And if you're familiar with Bob Proctor, you know what I'm talking about. But I heard him ask one time, do you want to know how to earn $1 million? And when I first heard that, alarm bells were going off in my head. Yeah, for sure, 100%. Tell me, how do I earn $1 million? Okay. And he said, simple. You provide $1 million worth of value. And I just thought, oh, Bob, you got me again, But the truth is, he's right. If you want to earn $1 million, you better learn how to find a way of providing $1 million worth of value. Okay? And sometimes, I'll have conversations with people. In fact, I got a text message the other day with somebody that said that, I need to earn a lot of money real fast. And channeling my inner Bob Proctor, I replied with, well, you better find a way to add a lot of value really fast. Okay? But I'll tell you, there'll be more in the next module as far as specific, more actionable ways that you can increase your income and add more value. So I'll see you in the next one. Right on.